Welcome to Cover Book Beat. I'm your host, Roger Nichols. Our guest today, Karen MacNeil, and if you're curious about wine, you probably already know her, whether as former wine correspondent for the Today Show or the host of the PBS series Wine, Food, and Friends with Karen MacNeil, or as the author of The Wine Bible, the single best-selling wine book in the United States, more than 800,000 copies sold. Now, the really good news is there's a new expanded third edition of this remarkable book, and we are very pleased to welcome Karen MacNeil.
My pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Before we talk about the book, I want to ask where the fascination with wine came from. Can you remember the first wine you tasted, and did you like it?
I loved it. And the first wines I drank, I was about 15, and they were 89-cent Bulgarian reds and $1 a bottle Liebfraumilch from Germany. And I absolutely adored those wines. I started very humbly, and I'm glad about that.
Great. Well, obviously, it's worked out very well for you. Do you have a large cellar at home, or do you just kind of buy as you need?
Yeah, I have a pretty, I have a, I would say, let's see, what would I have? Probably maybe 3,000 or so bottles. So I was okay during COVID, right? I said to my husband, honey, we're fine. We don't have to go anywhere. Um, and Yeah, one of the interesting questions, though, that you bring up that I've never successfully answered in any of my research is why so fewer women have cellars than men. When I met my husband, he didn't have a wine cellar. He loves wine, but I've had a wine cellar, one bottle at a time. I assure you, I don't have multiple cases of first growths,
Yeah.
although I wish I did.
Yeah.
Um, but I have, bottles of wine hand carried home from every wine region in the world.
Which, speaking of every wine region in the world, this new updated edition is fabulous. You've got 400 new color photos. You've updated everything, and you've got a great glossary for those of us who are burgeoning enophiles who don't know everything yet. That's very, very helpful. How long did it take you to do the research and pull all this together?
Yeah, well, the first Wine Bible, which was published in 2001, took 10 years, but I'm getting twice as fast because this one only took 4 years. Um, and you're right, Roger. One of the most practical and wonderful parts of the book is a grape glossary at the end of 400 grapes you might encounter. And so there you are in Greece, and you order something called Malagousia. Like, what is that? The Wine Bible is right there to tell you. And then a wine word dictionary of wine words in French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese, Hungarian, and Greek, and
Wow.
English.
Wow. So much fun indeed. When, like most people do, when I grabbed it, I turned immediately to the section of the book near where I live, uh, which is in Oregon. As you know, the state is best known for the Willamette Valley Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. And you write, and this is an interesting quote, you write, the top versions here are some of the most sensual wines in the United States. That's an interesting adjective. So, what does a wine have to do to generate sensual for you?
It has to feel really good. We often describe wines in terms of their flavor, cherry this or raspberry that, or tobacco or cigar box, but really what largely makes wine appealing is how it feels. And Oregon, especially Willamette Valley Pinot Noir, feels like some unreal combination of silk and velvet. I mean, it's just a beautiful feeling that is very sensual.
And it's kind of interesting. You note that the Oregon wines actually started in the Rogue Valley, in the southern part of the state, which has not quite blossomed the same way as Willamette Valley. Don't know the reason for that, but it's fascinating stuff.
Yeah, in any wine region, there has to be a critical mass of people who, for whatever odd reasons, come together and they're very ambitious and they help one another. And that was certainly true in the late 60s and early 70s in the Willamette, when you had people like David Lett and David Adelsheim. It became a kind of like in the way artist colonies develop. You get small groups of winemakers who begin to add energy to the whole dynamic. And now, Oregon has nearly 1,000 wineries. In the 1960s, it had 0 wineries.
Fascinating stuff. And one of the things I found talking with winemakers, they seem to be helpful. They will go out of their way to help other winemakers, spread the knowledge, throw in extra labor if needed be. This is not something that happens in a lot of businesses. Why do you think that is?
Because I think every winemaker realizes that what they're really up against is nature. And a friend of mine who's a winemaker here in the Napa Valley says, not only are we all up against nature, but nature bats last. And I don't know, that spirit of cooperation is a kind of aesthetic that I think many farmers have. Many people attached to the land have that kind of understanding that they must help each other.
Yeah. It reminds me of a section of the book. I would like to quote from one of the paragraphs that you write about Oregon, naturally, since we're hometown folks here. But you write that Oregon vintners many are dropouts or X's, and I like the phrase that's there: dropouts from the big city life, ex-high-tech execs, dropouts from college, ex-professors, dropouts from the counterculture, ex-theologians. A significant number of them, you note, are ex-California, ex-Burgundy winemakers. All of them are farmers at heart, And you've got this great little story about a winemaker who was getting ready to get married, and he asked his wife, should we rather have a diamond ring or 3 acres of high-quality grapes? And
she chose the grapes, by the way.
Good. I'm so glad about that. In your travels, have you ever encountered a wine that you just said, I'm sorry, there's just no way that this grape is going to work for me?
Let me say one thing in front of that, and then I'll answer that question, which is I'm actually going to be in the Willamette next week. On October 23rd, doing an event open to the public at Abbey Road Farm. So let me answer your question, though, which is, when I don't like a wine, I say to myself, okay, 3 possibilities exist. 1, it's not good. 2, I'm not paying enough attention, because if I paid attention, I would see the gem here. Or 3, I haven't had enough of this yet. And that's the most interesting psychologically aspect of not liking a wine. When people tell me that they don't like German Riesling or whatever, I think if you tasted it 50 times, I bet your impression would change, because some wines are sort of a rite of passage. They're like sushi. Almost no one liked sushi the very first time they tasted it. But the 100th time they tasted it, they were a complete sushi maniac, trying to find just the best sushi in town, right? So wines are like that. They often take a repeated tasting to kind of get your arms around it, understand what it tastes like, what to look for, all those things. And then it's like a light switch flips. All of a sudden you go from, I don't think I like this, to, ooh, I really like this.
So you kind of need a baseline of understanding what this is all about, I guess.
Yeah. I often say you have to hit the baseball 50 times. And if you taste that wine 50 times and then you still don't like it, fair enough. You don't like it.
I don't think that happens very often somehow, for those of us who enjoy wine. I have a really oddball question I've been dying to ask you. Okay, you are on a desert island. You can take as many bottles from as many countries and regions, but can only have one wine grape. What would you choose?
Oh, that's a good twist on that
Yeah.
question. What would I
So I'm
choose?
trying to think of
Only,
something that would be the most versatile and give you most combinations of possibilities of flavor ranges.
yeah, I think I would choose either Riesling or Sauvignon Blanc.
Mm,
Sauvignon Blanc is probably makes more really good wine in more countries than almost any other grape. I adore Pinot Noir, but Pinot Noir really it has about five places only where it makes really good wine around the world.
mm-hmm.
Cabernet can be delicious in lots of different places, so Cabernet would be a contender there too. But Riesling is radically different in all of the places where it's made, and Sauvignon Blanc is too. So that would give the biggest range of styles.
All right. I'm sorry to throw those weird things at you, but we need to get back to talk about this fabulous book of yours. One of the things that you talk about is the latest research on taste and smell about mastering wine. How many people did you have to interview, or research papers did you have to study to pull that together?
What I start to do, so the chapter called Mastering Wine that does have the latest research on taste and smell. Even though actually you'll be happy to know, in this new third edition of the Wine Bible, I wrote the Oregon chapter first because you don't have to start from the beginning. You can start wherever you want,
Right.
and so the research on taste and smell, I actually wrote that last. But all along those 4 years, I'm collecting huge files as I'm coming across various research papers and data. So in my office, we have file cabinets full of information on every aspect of wine, every place, every style, every region. And those, like an accordion, they just keep growing and growing and growing. And by the time I actually write about that place, I often have a file that's already 2 to 5 inches thick.
Wow. And then it becomes a question of selecting what's the best takeaway from all of this. What's the interesting parts of that. Was there one section that was more fun to write this time than in previous times?
Um, More fun. The one that was hard, it was fun, but it was really hard, was wine in the ancient world.
Mm-hmm.
Because, if you think about how anthropologists and archaeologists talk about time, right? Sometimes people are saying 6,000 BC, and sometimes people are saying 9,000 years ago, and sometimes people are saying during the Pleistocene era. And I finally had to make myself, a hand drawn chart of, okay, where are we? And then after figuring out, okay, the BC, add 2,000 years,
Yeah.
etc., I realized something. Oh no, the Neolithic period, which is the most critical period for wine because that's when pottery was invented, the Neolithic period is different in different parts of the world,
Ah.
which was I really felt like throwing myself off the roof of the building because now that chart had to be specific to China or the Near East, what was
Mm-hmm.
happening in Georgia. Georgia's Neolithic period is slightly different than China's Neolithic period. So by the time I figured all that out, I was actually very proud of this chapter because for the average person, reading about wine, if you tried to read your way through lots of historical books, it's really rough going. So
Yes.
to take all that massive amount of research and put it into 10 good pages was, I thought, a big accomplishment.
Well, I have to say that this is one of the finest reference books, and I'll be reading this and going back to it again and again for years to come because the wealth of information is in here. And I just don't know how you keep all that organized as you're going along.
It's a bit of a bear. I have we call her our director of operations who did keep all of this, um, every every bit of data on massive spreadsheets, and which I could never do. The first wine Bible had spreadsheets, but all by hand. Um, so yeah, I mean, you have to be not just love wine, but you have to be pretty organized about it.
Well, we are so glad that you and your staff have put this out. I'm assuming it's available right now, or is it publication date yet to
Yeah,
come?
no, it came out just last week,
Okay.
actually. And so it's available in bookstores and, of course, on Amazon. And if you want a signed and personalized copy for a gift for the holidays, for example, or Christmas, you can get one by going on KarenMacNeil.com, which is my website.
And you'll find a lot of interesting things there as well. I will have to say, you've been most generous with your time with today. I have one final tiny question. When you get done with the interviews today, what's going to be in your glass?
Ah, I think a really beautiful California sparkling wine that is a rosé called Le Rêve. It's the name means the dream, and it was sent to me last week as a congratulations gift from a winemaker here in the Napa Valley.
Well, congratulations to you and your staff for a wonderful job. Well done. Couldn't recommend it higher, and we'll be using this for years to come. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Karen MacNeil, The Wine Bible, new third edition. Take care.